there was a what does your ideal overloom look like? So I made this kind of utopian society where there was like, I don't even remember, they had some form of sustainable energy that was rather ridiculous. And of course I talked about my internship and my love of learning. You know, basically everything that I talked about at this exhibition. Now the application process was rather difficult, so there was a lot to balance. You know, I was still doing 6 classes, and I had about between 13 and 20 essays to actually write. I had to worry about taking standardized tests and, you know, communicating with everyone who was involved, both in terms of email and also I think one area in which I really struggled was communicating with my parents, because I was you know, I was reluctant to admit oftentimes how little I'd done, and I think that just stressed them more out because I wasn't really talking to them. For that, I apologize. And of course, you know, I had to worry about my own health, both mental and physical. And there were a lot of events to go to, interviews, parties, etc. So, so my survival, basically the first part of it, I survived by through denial. So really, I didn't start working on the main body of the essays I was supposed to do until very late in the process. You know, and then when that came around, I realized there was no way I could do this with the time management skills that I had at the time. So I looked for what assistance I could. I talked to the college counselors a lot. Really, I think I could have better utilized them earlier on in the process, but later in the process I started emailing them more than ever. I started seeing an organizational consultant who unfortunately could not make it today, and she's been really helpful in terms of scheduling and helping me lay things out, teaching me how to lay things out visually on a calendar so that I see how much time I have to do them. And I got my parents to, I guess you could call it voluntary imprisonment. So I basically had my dad like come in and check on me to make sure I was making adequate progress, and thank you very much for that. That was you know, not easy, and I wasn't always the nicest person to work with. What really helped me at the end was not looking at them as work, but doing that sort of change of perspective that allowed me to see them as talking about what I was interested in, rather than just writing reviews for myself on Amazon was kind of how I looked at it before that. And like when I actually got down to writing, I found that I really took to it rather well. So I'm going to read that cocaine essay now because you're all wondering. So, except for the people who I've told the story to, they are sick of hearing this. So, I first encountered cocaine in kindergarten. It happened more or less by accident, actually. I could have just as easily encountered cobweb or codfish, but I ended up with cocaine and subsequently found myself the subject of a very odd parent-teacher conference in which all parties seemed equally confused. The incident started with a dictionary. I decided I wanted to learn everything I could about a single unfamiliar word. This fit with my character. I was well known for dragging enormous tomes such as the Mayo Clinic Family Health Book to family outings, which in turn stemmed from what might be called the essential question of my cheeky schoolchild years. Why wait to be taught when you can teach yourself? By some strange trick of luck, I chose the word cocaine. I painstakingly hand-wrote the definition, a crystalline alkaloid derived from the leaves of the coca plant, and went over it several times until I had it memorized. I copied everything exactly as it appeared in the dictionary, including the syllable separator, the phonetic symbols, and the etymological note, which was a straightforward leap from coca to cocaine. Nobody at school knew about my secret obsession until we got to the letter C in class. On Wednesdays, we would make riddles to bring home for our parents. We would write a clue on a flap of paper, and under the flap, the answer, which had to start with the letter of the week. It happened while my teacher was walking around, making sure everyone was spelling everything correctly. She told Clayton he couldn't use his name as the answer to a riddle. Congratulated Kelly on her mastery of the silent E in cone. and then came to me. Proudly, I held out my riddle, certain that I had created gold. My teacher raised her eyebrows. Although by then it had become apparent that I was a bit of a strange child, my clues still puzzled her. A crystal and alkaloid derived from the leaves of the coca plant? She frowned and lifted the flap. Her eyes widened. That word is not appropriate. I had already created a stir weeks earlier by suggesting the word margarita when we were brainstorming for M. This too was innocent. My house is located near Margarita Avenue, but my teacher had written margarita with an A on the board anyway, and confusingly drawn a wine glass next to it. Fortunately, all the adults were well acquainted, and my parents did not look anything like drug addicts. I explained how I had learned the words, and heads nodded around me, understanding. The conference ended on good terms, and despite my intimate knowledge of the word cocaine, not until middle school did I realize that it referred to a recreational drug. I left the conference still thinking of it as a crystalline alkaloid derived from the leaves of the coca plant, not an illicit white powder people used to get high. There was a false inference to be made here, that my curiosity endangered me, that I was lucky it didn't get me into more trouble than it did. On the contrary, I think I'm lucky to have that curiosity. I'm grateful that I enjoy going to school every day instead of dreading it. I love that I can find joy in hopping from link to link on Wikipedia, or reading about cocaine in the dictionary, or piecing together the geometry of functions of a complex variable. After all, there are plenty of other more detrimental ways of seeking enjoyment. Alcohol, narcotics, and yes, cocaine being good examples. But my drug of choice, learning, is good for me, and that makes me very lucky indeed. So the outcome was pretty good, I'd say. I ended up deciding on Carleton College because I was looking for a liberal arts environment because I really liked, Wildwood is the small liberal arts high school, as Marshall Hanning has observed. But I also wanted somewhere that had a really good math program, and so this just worked out well for me. Now, my extracurriculars. So I started playing the clarinet. So I had actually begun in elementary school, and in 4th grade, I really did enjoy it. But in 5th grade, I was in a big band, and my music teacher told me to bring a book instead of my instrument after a while. So that pretty much killed that for a while. But I resurrected it as a zombie in 2011 because I miss playing, and I happened to pick up a clarinet at Wildwood, and it just felt so good to be back on it that I wanted to continue. And I've been playing that for the past 3 or 4 years, and now I'm able to play a Mozart piece that I've always that I've heard before and really loved, and so that's basically a dream come true for me. I also do math tutoring, both at Virginia Avenue Park, which we talked about, and I also now do paid tutoring for high school students. I do one-on-one. I've tutored people at Santa Monica High School. I think one at Windward, and then of course Vanessa's sister. I don't give them a discount because I'm a type 1. And of course, the Invisible College, which I founded, which I didn't found by myself. I helped found it. Really, it was Julian Corbett's idea. And the philosophy was built on students teaching other students. So we actually do things like we host weekly discussions where we share our ideas about various topics, very intellectual things like what is love, and what should the United States do to reduce its carbon footprint, and then we also have more traditional lessons where usually mine are about math in some way, and Owen did a very good one on game theory. And this is actually a good segue into my senior project because that was actually in association with the Invisible College. So what I did was I hosted an event called Invisible Think, which was a combination of talks and performances. So basically the the performances were there. Originally, they were there because I didn't want people to like get bored, and they actually turned out to be really like equally appealing as the talks. And I invited speakers, performers, like people who were in the organization, and also most of the performers I think were outside the organization, with the exception of William Yates. But it was good to have that kind of solidarity and get some publicity. I also managed to get a middle schooler into the presenters, so I'm hoping that he'll take up the mantle. It is kind of a hefty mantle though. And then as part of the event, I gave a talk on uncertainty and chaos, and my question for this project was, what is uncertainty and how can it be circumvented? Which I explored in the talk, but I also explored in the planning process because I wasn't really, there were a lot of points of uncertainty where I was waiting for a response from somebody, or not sure what to do in certain logistical scenarios. Anyway, just to prove to you that I am not making this up, I'm going to play an excerpt from, well, actually this appears to be unable to be in full screen, but I suppose it's okay. Oh, it's not going brighter? Oh well. Could someone hit the lights actually, please? Is that better? That's me. I'm that dark smudge. Something that's sensitive to initial conditions. That means that those tiny differences in the initial conditions have to be magnified over time. This is often called the butterfly effect, and it's illustrated with the example like, is weather so sensitive that a butterfly flapping its wings in Argentina can cause a tornado in Texas? That's the allegory that's often used. Now, one thing that they leave out is that there are lots of butterflies all over the world flapping their wings at all at the same time, so the net effect is like they're kind of canceling each other out. So an example of something that's sensitive to initial conditions is the double pendulum, and I'm going to show you a short video. So the sound is actually not necessary, but I'm going to pause this for a second. So as you can see, their initial positions are almost completely identical. So there is a slight difference in them. So it's like 0.001 or something like that. Something really ridiculously small. And so when you allow them to start moving, they start out with similar behavior. And you'll see that over time, their trajectories will gradually start to look different and eventually be completely unrecognizable in terms of similarity. So they're, This is what I look at. All right, so anyway, just to go back to my wishes, worries, and obligations question, I want to talk a little bit about why I picked this. So during the college process, I think I became resistant to taking on difficult jobs. I wasn't, I'm actually realizing in my Brave New World essay, I was a little bit hypocritical because I wasn't entirely addressing the problems that I needed to. So, to an extent, I think some of the demands were unreasonable, but also I was a little bit unreasonable about taking them on. And unfortunately, I do think this habit carried over into the second semester. So I was really resistant to continuing the balancing act, and I put less effort than I could have into my obligations. I started missing deadlines, I became unreliable, and that's not something I'm proud of. It's not really who I want to be. It's not what I consider to be great about me. I want to be someone who's adaptable and productive. And what we've explored in this presentation are supposed to constitute the tools that I'll use moving forward in order to fight against the inactivity. So things like assigning, prioritizing, assigning importance to tasks, understanding, looking at things objectively, and not just putting them aside because you don't want to look at them, but putting things aside only when they're not important. Make time to do the important things. When I actually do have to do something, laying everything out and figuring out what I need to do. I often find that when you don't look at it closely, it looks way harder than it does when you do look at it closely, when you get started. Figure out what you need to do it, and don't worry about whether you can do it, because if you have to do it, you might as well, or die trying, which is very, very rare. And then finally, all of this can happen at once. So much like science or the writing process, you shouldn't be afraid to do things out of order if you need to. And this is actually a very fitting picture because it involves me it looks like I'm looking from a mountaintop and looking forward to something. And this really is what I want to do, looking forward to college. So now, before I'm kicked out of Wildwood for all eternity, anyone want to swing? Questions?
Questions for faculty and staff first. Go out for that to be the last questions after. Presentation.
Well, no, I would like to ask you a question that would really show how well you can think on the spot, but I don't have one. So instead I'm going to point out something that was really, really gratifying for me. When we were doing our debrief at the end of the year of the course, you started talking about the course and how it had evolved from what you had learned in MUSH and scaffolded on, and each of my projects had built, and you understood it better than I did. Well, I don't know about that. You totally got, however, what my intentions had been. And I don't know that anybody's ever done that before. And I just want you to know how much I really appreciated that. And I'll probably never forget that. It was a great way for me to go out. So thank you for that.
Am I calling on people?
Yes. I think one of the reasons why a lot of us teachers are not, I'm going to speak for myself, I don't know if students the same, but I've been just kind of trying to think of something I can ask you, or a challenging one that you haven't fully addressed in this beautiful, thorough, funny, awesome way. So thank you, and also, I just want to say, it was such a pleasure teaching you last semester. I only taught you that one semester, but you made a really big impression on me as a teacher and as someone who studies literature. It's wonderful that a math student gave me that. I appreciate two things in particular. One, that the titles of your papers seem to always come back to math, and one was actually a math problem. And that won our title contest, I think. So that's awesome.
And he wasn't there.
And he wasn't there. It was that good. And two, how you can make everything about math, and yet it's more like, I don't know, that's not really it, because that's just like shoehorning a topic into what you like, it's something you like into everything. It's not that. It's more like you point out how your interests in math are in everything, and which is a different way. Instead of pushing that in, it's just you sort of can pull it out. And I think that's an amazing gift, and is like the hallmark of being a teacher. And I'm very excited to see you do that. I'm sorry, I don't have a question.
I have an actual question. Two questions, very simple. How long did you practice your presentation?
Barely.
Okay, second question, can I have a copy of the diagram in the beginning where you show flow and like?
Yeah,
all
that's
that
on
stuff?
Wikipedia also,
Okay.
actually. I didn't get it from there.
No, I too, like Ness, want to congratulate you on a really wonderful and totally unique presentation. We'll be talking about it, I'm going to guess, for a while. And my question for you is really about you and Invisible College and the people who are a part of that, because one of the things that I love, and so I'll include William and Owen up there in this as well, is watching all of you, teach one another, push one another, support one another. And you have found a community where some of us are sitting here trying to figure out, what was that thing in math that you were talking about? I'm guessing that maybe Owen knows, right? And maybe Max knows, right? There are people in the room who, for you, can provide a kind of social glue, right? And so I guess my question in saying that again and honoring the people in the room for whom they have been your glue is where and how will you find them at Carleton?
Well, actually, that was one of the reasons that I picked Carleton, was because I saw that there definitely is already a very strong community of people who are interested in various things, but also in particular are interested in math and computer science, and also things that are kind of, I guess, traditionally close by, like chemistry and physics. And in terms of seeking them out, I think most of that I'm going to deliberately try to take classes that allow me to branch out and find those people, because it's always nice to it's always good to make friends who challenge you and who you can bounce ideas off of. The other aspect of that is that I also do want to keep my old friends, and so and I do actually hope, it'll be difficult, but I do hope to keep the Invisible College going beyond my own departure. It may have to be done through Skype, and it may not be successful, but I definitely want to continue that community. So I'll make new friends and keep the old.
And I wish you flow.
So it's really funny. Today I opened up an envelope that was from Carleton College. Funny, right? And it's a letter from the dean, dear colleague at Wildwood School. Greetings from sunny Minnesota. Remember, it's not sunny. We were there the majority of the year. Or it will be very cold. So bring the right clothes. We're delighted to welcome 500 students. We look forward to welcoming Goldman right there. Please accept this poster as a token of our appreciation. So here's this little poster. Carleton, you may keep it if you will. And it talks about the bald spot. Did you hear about the bald spot when you were there, right? So it says, pay close attention to the bald spot. It's a four-season gathering spot ideal for frisbee, ice skating, class discussion groups, and general merriment. So 16% of your time may be here. So that's the bald spot. You will be there, or maybe a little more than 16%. As I was listening to your presentation, I loved it. I don't have questions, but I want to tell you the 3 times this year that I will remember and sort of interactions that we had. So the first was reading your essay, your cocaine essay. Having worked in college admission for 25 years, I read the essay, one eyebrow raised, the other eyebrow raised. Then they both came down, and I said, this is a good risk to take. So, kudos. Then the next time was right the day after winter break started. You just appeared you to answer. And you don't have to answer them right now. You can email me. Just, I do it to everybody. And Noah said, well, I got out a pen, I went, and I handed it back to the guy, and the guy said, oh, 6 years of doing alumni interviews, I've never had anybody answer these questions and answer them correctly. You have a bright future. And don't forget the elementary kids, right? Don't think about putting a tweed jacket on them all the time. Look at those little kids and get them excited about math, because that's something I think is a true calling for you. So don't forget the little ones, because it can help create a future society filled with mathematicians because of your excitement and your love of math. So congratulations, and please stay in touch.
Thank you for the great presentation, though. Having seen it come together, fantastic, great. I don't know, I don't have superlatives to describe it, but something that I ended up doing is I feel like it's my speech and debate here. It's like I flow, write down all the things that are happening, whatever, and then make notes of like what happened, and then I circled a bunch of things, and next to them I wrote like deep. And like, why wait to be taught when you can teach yourself? Like, this deep thoughts. When you were talking about teaching, you said intuition should precede theory. I'm like, oh, that's deep. When you talked about something you have from Alton, that aptitude comes from effort. I'm like, oh, that's good, I gotta write that down. And then at the end, you're like, learning is my drug of choice. I said, oh, this guy. And in watching your exhibition, I thought to myself that is who you are, that you have a depth of character, a depth of knowledge, a depth of ability. And that all came through here because I was telling some people in the grapevine before they came in, I'm like, you might have a problem distinguishing what he's doing as a breadth from what he's doing as a depth. Because what he's going to do is going to share with you his experience, his work, his passion for that learning in all of the subjects. And so when you're done, you'll be like, well, it kind of didn't follow the guidelines exactly. Because, it was very deep here and deep here, and he didn't shortchange any of the classes, any of the things that he's done, any of the experiences, and shared them all with us. And that's what made it such a fantastic presentation. That's what made it so memorable, something that we'll be talking about, years from now. Remember when you're going into this thing? Oh, good thing, so you got videotape. So have it to model. And so it's been wonderful having you in advisory when we've had our CMIs and we had conversations. That's where I could see that, even though I never got to teach you in a class, that I could see that there was a depth of thought, there was a depth of character. And I'm happy that you, and the other thing I wanted to piggyback on something that Vanessa said was that throughout it, there was this math. But as she said, it wasn't shoehorned in there. It wasn't like my theme is math, so I have to work in math is like this. But it was finding, as she said, places in all of the different subjects where for you there is math, and that language is there. And then other people who might not see it, you put it on display for us that we're like, oh wait a minute, that is in there. And people say, math is the language of the universe. So to be, and the very first book that you had about going up the mountain, and then the more that you can see based on your math, deep. So again, thank you very much for this presentation. It's been a pleasure to have you in advisory. If family and friends like to say anything, we're going to let you do that, but if the faculty could step out right now and you guys can continue with the one for kudos, and we'll be back shortly because we don't have a lot. Thank you.
Your ego is up to here, man. Yeah. Said Latin. Los bros, Goldman.
Your mother.
Okay, I wanted to tell you, I actually prepared something and I brought a piece of paper with me and I lost it right beforehand. So I'm just gonna have to, as everybody says, don't worry, speak from the heart. And I just want to say that, you know, when you started high school in 9th grade, I remember back to school night in advisory, Ariane asked all the parents to write one word about each of our kids that described our kids. And for both years I wrote unconventional. And that's exactly what describes you. But you don't look unconventional. You look like a nice, polite math student, you know, really a wonderful young man, which you are. But you're unconventional in the way that you don't subscribe to the conventional idea of success and happiness. And that's what I really admire about you, that what you believe makes success and happiness is pursuing your love of learning and your interpersonal relationships and, you know, just being who you are and, you know, and what's been hard for, I think, your two conventional parents is that we didn't come to see that all along the way. And I want to say that I'm finally realizing that and appreciating you for who you are and how proud I am of you. Okay, should have found that piece of paper. But you know, so forgive me for not realizing that I am a tiger mom just trying to masquerade as a pussycat, you know. And I want to thank Wildwood for being here for you and for you to you know, have all these wonderful friends who you know, and for this environment and you know, for your wonderful friends who see who you are and appreciate you when we couldn't, and who, you know, they know Evening Noah and they love him. And and as you go on to Carleton, of course I've come to realize now that it is the best place for you. It's the right choice because it's an extension of all the wonderful things that you've taken from Wildwood. And you know, as one of the students at Carleton said, it's when you're there, it's not about being better than the next person. It's about being better than you were yesterday. And I think that's what you're taking away from Wildwood and what you're bringing with you and what you're going to get at Carleton. And I just can't wait to see what happens next for you.
I didn't want to say anything, and I asked you if I could be quiet, and you said no. So I don't think people can underestimate what an enormous challenge it is to be your parent. And I suspect that may be true for your teachers too, but ultimately a very satisfying journey. But I remember 6 years ago when we walked in here and you had your backpack and we both looked around and said, do you belong here? And it's clear you belong here. And I've learned a lot from you, but not just like how to do the quadratic formula, but like about humility and introspection. And thank you. That's all I want to say. I think we're done, right?
All your hugs.
Yeah, you guys want to do hugs now?
Kumbaya. Oh, Noah.
No, it's time for you to hug your parents.
Everybody, hug.
Congratulations.
It's not a tutu. I can do it anyway.
You're such a